This is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Annie Lay and Raymond John Clark III? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Annie Lay was born in San Jose, California on July 3, 1985. She was raised in Placerville. Annie was exceptionally intelligent and did well in school. She was the valedictorian of her graduating class in high school. She was voted the most likely to be the next Einstein. Annie moved from California to New York to attend the University of Rochester. She graduated with a bachelor's degree in 2007. Her major was cell and developmental biology. She was accepted into the pharmacology PhD program at the Yale School of Medicine in New Haven, Connecticut. She started the program in September 2007. Annie was scheduled to graduate in 2013. In 2008, Annie became engaged to a graduate student at Columbia University named Jonathan Wadowski. The couple planned to marry on September 13, 2009, in Syosset, New York, close to where Jonathan was from. One of Annie's responsibilities as a student was to conduct research on mice. Occasionally, she spent time in a 120,000 square foot research laboratory located at 10 Amistad Street. A man named Raymond John Clark III was an animal technician who worked in that laboratory. Let's take a look at his background. Raymond was born in Wallingford, Connecticut on January 28, 1985. He grew up in Branford, which is about 13 miles east of New Haven. In high school, he was considered a good student and was active in sports. He played football and baseball. Raymond desperately wanted to work at Yale University in the laboratory at 10 Amistad Street. He knew 3 people who worked there: his girlfriend Jennifer, his sister, and his brother-in-law. Raymond was so eager to get a job at that facility that he lied on his resume, claiming he had worked on a farm and was familiar with animals. Ironically, Yale didn't do their research. They hired Raymond despite the lie. He was eventually promoted to animal technician. His job was to take care of the animals. He would provide them food and water, report any unusual behavior, like if the animal appeared to be ill, and when a researcher determined that it was time for animals to conclude their earthly journey, it was Raymond's job to kill the animals using carbon dioxide. Raymond was considered strict about following the rules in the laboratory. On January 1, 2008, Raymond and his girlfriend Jennifer became engaged. They planned to marry near the end of 2011. In March 2009, Raymond moved into an apartment with Jennifer. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On September 8, 2009, Raymond Clark arrived for work at 10 Amistad Street at about 7 a.m. Annie Lay arrived at 10:09 a.m. 2 minutes later, she entered room G13, which was a laboratory in the basement. There she conducted research on mice. Sometime around or not long after 10:40 a.m., Raymond murdered Annie. He initially attacked her in room G13, then moved her body to another room, G22, where he strangled her. At about 12:50 p.m., a fire alarm activated in the building. There was no fire, but of course people still had to evacuate. Raymond exited the building with everyone else and returned when the fire alarm situation was resolved. At this point, Raymond hid Annie's body behind a plumbing access panel in the men's locker room. He attempted to clean up the crime scene as well. Raymond left work at 3:48 p.m. When Annie did not return home from the laboratory, her roommate became concerned. At 10 p.m., the roommate called the police. The police started searching for Annie, but did not have any success. The next day at 7:30 p.m., the police announced that Annie was a missing person. They reviewed surveillance video that may have captured Annie. The police noticed that Annie entered the building on Amistad Street on September 8, but never exited, not even when the fire alarm activated at about 12:50 p.m. The police watched all of the available video carefully to make sure that nobody carried Annie's body out of the building, like in a bag or using some other method. They also searched through all the garbage that was removed from the building. The police became confident that Annie's body must be in the building somewhere. They started searching the building more thoroughly and found a small amount of blood in room G13. Later, over a ceiling panel, they found a bloody sock and a rubber glove. There were only 2 people in the area where Annie was at around the time she went missing: a contractor who repaired and replaced lighting, and Raymond Clark. The police quickly determined that the contractor was not involved. They focused their attention on Raymond. At first, Raymond didn't appear to be suspicious. He told the police that he felt badly about Annie's disappearance, but had nothing to do with it. He said that on September 8, he arrived to work at about 7 a.m., he took a break at about 10 a.m., he saw Annie around 10:30 a.m., and then saw her leave at 12:30 p.m. He did not see her after returning to the building after the fire alarm, and left work a few hours later. Again, the police didn't think he was suspicious, but they wondered why they didn't see Annie leaving at 12:30 p.m., or at all, for that matter. As the police continued their search of the building, investigators noticed the smell of human decomposition. A police dog was brought in. On September 13, the day Annie was supposed to be married, her body was found behind the plumbing access panel. She had injuries to her face, and her underwear was pulled down. The police found a great deal of evidence connecting Raymond to the crime, including his DNA and Annie's DNA on a green pen that was near her body. Raymond was arrested on September 17, 2009, and charged with murder. He initially pleaded not guilty, but in March of 2011, Raymond pleaded guilty to murder. He also entered an Alford plea on the charge of attempted sexual assault. An Alford plea is when a defendant maintains their innocence, but they admit that the government has enough evidence to get a conviction. On June 3, 2011, Raymond was sentenced to 44 years in prison. He is scheduled for release on September 16, 2053, when he will be 68 years old. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. Annie Lay had expressed some concerns about getting married. She was worried that she was too young. When she went missing, some people thought that she had simply developed cold feet about the wedding that was coming up in 5 days. Overall, however, Annie was quite excited about her upcoming marriage. It's natural and appropriate for people to be concerned about getting married. Annie had a bright future ahead of her. Her husband was also a doctoral student. He was working toward a degree in mathematics. Annie wanted to be a biomedical researcher and discover cures for various types of cancer. There was every indication that she was going to make a significant contribution, which would have made the world a better place. All of her dreams and all the good she could have done were eliminated by one person, which brings me to item number 2. When Raymond Clark was young, he was described as friendly, personable, respectful, aloof, and quiet. He had a good sense of humor and plenty of friends. Raymond was highly competitive in athletics, but initially did not have any difficulty managing his temper. He did not engage in behavior that would attract the attention of law enforcement, and he had no criminal history. Over time, Raymond's behavior started to change, especially in the context of romantic relationships. Raymond had a girlfriend before he was with Jennifer. This girlfriend suggested that Raymond was controlling and demanding. He would tell her what friends she could hang out with and what friends she had to avoid. Raymond controlled when she could speak and what volume she was to use. Eventually, he would complain because she was breathing too loudly. His girlfriend knew that the relationship was not healthy. She broke up with him. Raymond lost his temper and, allegedly, became physically violent. The girlfriend filed a complaint with the police. This was in 2003. She was not interested in pressing charges, but the police spoke to Raymond. He was told that if he had any contact with her, they would be filing charges against him. Raymond did not attempt to contact her. Both he and his ex-girlfriend moved on and dated other people. Raymond eventually became romantically involved with Jennifer. Moving to item number 3, the idea that Raymond was controlling and demanding is reinforced when looking at his performance at his job in the laboratory at Yale. People there said he was overly strict about the rules. If somebody forgot to clean a cage containing mice or did not put on a lab coat, they would receive a nasty comment or message from Raymond. He seemed to enjoy criticizing the researchers and the students in the laboratory, as if he wanted to prove that they weren't really that smart. They didn't deserve to be in a position above him. In this laboratory, highly trained researchers worked alongside relatively unskilled workers. People who worked there said it caused a lot of tension. It was clear who was making the money and who wasn't. Perhaps this was particularly frustrating to Raymond. He was working alongside all these people who were successful or would be successful, while he was trapped in a low-level and low-paying job. In addition, he was the one cleaning up all the messes caused by the people he envied. Item number 4. Raymond Clark never revealed his motive for the murder. He admitted to the murder and expressed remorse, but he did not explain why he did it. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Raymond Clark was relatively well adjusted in most dimensions, but had a marked deficit in the area of romance. He was controlling and perfectionistic. Raymond used simple and straightforward tactics to control romantic partners. He was not sophisticated or particularly manipulative. Rather, he just demanded what he wanted and lost his temper if he didn't get his way. At his job, Raymond frequently interacted with Annie. He developed a strong romantic attraction to her. From his point of view, she was ideal. Within the laboratory, she was part of the upper class, not as high as a professor, but she was on her way. Being with Annie would have increased Raymond's standing and minimized frustration about belonging to a lower class. On one occasion, Raymond criticized Annie for not handling laboratory mice according to his standards. Annie tried to defuse the situation by being apologetic. Raymond was trying to control Annie's behavior through his criticism. When she responded by apologizing, he took this as a sign that he was gaining control. He was establishing dominance. Raymond's romantic fantasy became more intense from that point on. At about 10:35 a.m. on the day of the murder, Raymond checked his email and found a message that Annie had sent to people in a laboratory. The email explained how she was getting married in a few days. My guess is that the email contained something about how she would be out of work for a while. Raymond perceived Annie's upcoming wedding as a rejection. He became enraged and confronted her in room G13. He demanded to have sex with her, but she resisted. Raymond beat her into unconsciousness. He broke her jaw and her collarbone. At this point, he knew that he was in trouble. The building was surrounded by cameras. There was no way he was going to hide this attack. He moved Annie to room G22 and strangled her. Raymond knew the building pretty well. He thought that by hiding Annie's body behind a plumbing access panel, perhaps she would never be found. I guess he believed that the plumbing in that area would never malfunction and need to be serviced, or he believed that he could come back later and move the body. He remained calm and came to work the next day as if everything was fine. Despite his perfectionistic nature, he even resisted updating the unpopular break room sign which read, "Safety first. This lab has worked X days without a lost time homicide." Raymond spoke to the police and didn't seem too suspicious. An FBI agent who investigated the case would later say that Raymond did a pretty good job at hiding the body. It took the police 5 days to find her, despite knowing that she was somewhere in the building for most of that time. Moving to my final item, number 5. Annie Lay was murdered in an area that was considered safe and secure by a person who nobody suspected as capable of homicide. Annie had no way to protect herself. She was not in a relationship with Raymond. Therefore, she did not know about his controlling nature. Raymond appeared to be normal in most ways, as his fantasy intensified in isolation, until, in one homicidal moment, his desires crossed over from the fantasy world into the real world. Those are my thoughts in the case of Annie Lay and Raymond John Clark III. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.